Hello, everyone. How are we doing today? I thank the Father that have an opportunity to be on this line today. Um, I've been a little under the weather, and I'm here now. So I praise the Father for the opportunity. And I wanted to talk about a particular subject while the opportunity has arose. While I was dealing with some things, and my health was definitely going through some channels in the last couple of weeks, or I'm guessing maybe 3 weeks. And I couldn't even talk. I don't know what was going on. I'm not sure what was taking place. So I thank the Father today that I'm definitely able to talk to you guys. And I'm not going to talk long because I don't want to lose the little voice I have. But I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about this story about Apostle Paul. Now, Apostle Paul was a very interesting character, if I may say so. Him indeed was definitely an interesting character from the beginning, but he was one of those guys that believed that what he was doing was accurate, and a lot of us do that. A lot of times that we may feel that we are going in the right direction, and in doing so, sometime in our reach of the right direction, we could be going in a direction that man desire us to go. And sometime because we're unsure which way or how we were taught, sometimes we just follow through to that way. And I'm one that has been in ministry for quite some time, and I've learned how to lean not to my own understanding on a lot of things, because I discovered that my understanding is definitely not Yah's understanding. My voice is still a little bit under the weather, so I'm not going to be before you long, but I do want to share these things with you. And if I'm looking all over the places, because I'm still trying to um, be able to see my camera from where I'm at, and also be able to do my recording. I changed spaces a lot. Give me 1 second, please. Okay. Now, in this particular story, we're talking about a man that was chosen for a purpose. But the funny thing is about his particular purpose that was different than most is because his purpose came with a great deal of suffering. Now, we read the word and we look at the word quite often, but I want you to think about that. This man's purpose in Yah was to suffer. Now, who in their right mind want a purpose that requires a suffering? Now, this is something that you don't naturally hear people talk about. We are quick to talk about the good of getting into ministry. You know how it is. But really, this man's whole ministry was suffering. And we look at it in this essence, and we not even really paying attention that his whole ministry, from the time that he started going in the right direction to the time that he got his head cut off with the Philippians, he suffered. He suffered tremendously for the purpose of walking in the things that Yah has called him to do. So all the prosperity preachers and all the people telling you that all good things, and I'm telling you, Suffering comes with walking in the things of Yah. Suffering comes. So you may think that this thing is a simple ride. Trust me, suffering comes. Sometimes your purpose is suffering. Sometimes your destiny is suffering. And that's where most people falter in their ministry because they had an ideology of what they thought ministry was going to be about. They thought this ministry was going to be the greatest thing that they ever had, and nothing was going to tear it down, and their spirit was going to be in good place and good standing. Had no idea the severity of what they had to suffer in order to do the work that Yah called them to do, and it was destined for them to suffer. And a lot of times is that we do not understand the severity of what ministry will put you into. Because when you walking in a certain way, there's going to be a lot of people going in a different direction than you. And you're messing with the status quo. And this is where most people do not see themselves coming in tune with everybody. And all of a sudden they feel like they are all alone on the boat ride called hell. Because that's a spirit that you will encounter. You know, a lot of times we don't even realize the severity that this man had to go through in order to reach others with the word. So let's just look at it because he wasn't the only one. And before we get too deeply into it, like I said, my voice is still a little chompy here. Let's talk about another man. His name was Stephen. So Stephen was one of the deacons that was chosen from the other apostles. There was 7 of them. And Stephen was actually the one that started evangelizing even before Philip. So let's just go into this a little bit. And this is Acts chapter 6. Now we're going to look at verse 8. It says, "And Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people. Then there arose certain of the synagogue, which is called the synagogue of the Libertines and Caesarians and Alexandrians, and of them of Sicilia and of Asia, disputing with Stephen. And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the spirit by which he spoke. Then they, come on now, suborned men, which said, We have heard him speak blasphemy, words against Moses and against Yah. And they stirred up the people and the elders and the scribes and came upon him and caught him and brought him to the council. And they set up false witnesses, which said, This man ceased not to speak blasphemous words against his holy place and the law. For we heard him say that this Jesus of Nazareth shall destroy this place and shall change the custom which Moses delivered us. And all that sat in the council, looking steadfastly on him, saw his face as it has been the face of an angel." Now, I want to tell you something. If you are destined to suffer, would you took the job? Would you moved in the purpose that you had, whether you went to school to get the education or not, if you knew that you were destined to suffer? And most people will not take the responsibility of this job if they knew that it comes with the consequences of suffering? Do you think Stephen woke up in the morning and all he wanted to do was praise the Father, that his whole life would be turned around and he would have been stoned? Do you think that this man we now call Apostle Paul, who felt in his heart that he was following the way of the Messiah, doing all these things, would have thought that they would have cut off his head? Do you think that some of the people that followed the truth would have really assumed that they would have died? Like, we do not see none of that when we are standing on the easy street of just going to a ministry as many days and times we want. Never even think about the fact that you're going to suffer for being in a position that you're in. All of us will. So now here it is that Stephen decided to go all the way back to the Torah, or what we call the Old Testament, to express to them how the Messiah even got involved with the life you see today. And these people didn't want to. Now, they heard him. They said he had a face like an angel, that he was sitting there, and they were attentive to what he was saying. You read this in chapter 7 of Acts. And we're not going to read all of this because this is not the main story. But he broke it down to a science. Now, here's this man is a man you not even read, that went to any sort of school to get his education. But yet, if you read the story that he wrote, or the scribe or whoever was in charge of writing it, this man broke down all of these things on how he saw where the Messiah fit in. Hey, and at the end, verse 60. Now, I want you to understand, he did all that talking. He gave all the rendition of what he felt was the purpose of life, and the reason why we should all sing together and hallelujah. And this is what they did to him, no matter what he said. And we go down here to verse. Now we back in still in chapter, excuse me, chapter 6. And this is the end result of what happened to Stephen here. He suffered. And it says here that he stated, and this is verse 56. It says, when they, in the verse 54, it says, and when they heard these things, they were cut to the heart. They heard what he said. They were cut to the heart for what he spoke. And they gnashed on him with their teeth. They were angry. And he, being full of the Holy Spirit, looked up steadfastly into heaven and saw the glory of Yah. And he saw the Messiah standing on the right hand of him. And he said, behold, I see the heavens open and the Son of Man standing on the right hand of Yah. And they cried out with a loud voice and stooped their ears and ran upon him with one accord and cast him out of the city and stoned him. And the witness laid down their clothes at a young man's feet, whose name was Saul. And they stoned Stephen, calling upon Yah and saying, Lord. Now this is very important here. This is very, very important that you understand. In verse 59, it says, and they stoned Stephen, and he called upon the Most High. And he's saying, Lord, Messiah, receive my spirit. And he kneeled down and cried with a loud voice, Lord, lay not this sin to their charge. And when he said this, he fell asleep. Well, he was being stoned. I'm sure those stones was hurting him. He suffered because a lot of times we don't want that clarity in our heart. We got this thing in our mind that because we are walking in the things of Yah, that you ain't going to suffer nothing. Ain't nothing going to happen to you. No pain, nothing. You just going to have a great life. You're going to be rich and full with great things, and you don't ever have to worry. Don't believe that. Don't believe that. If you says in the word that you are not of the world, even if you in it, then that should tell you something. Because the world will take care of the world. But if you're walking in the things of Yah, there's a possibility that nobody going to be there, because some of them are still afraid of the suffering. And if they're afraid of the suffering, trust me, they're not going to want to hear nothing you got to say, because they may very be the people that will stone you. Even the enemy that stoned Stephen, it was his own people. So anyway, so here it is. We now and we going into this place called the Damascus Street, is where this story unfolded with Saul. And Saul, at this point, was being kicked off his horse, so to speak, as a methodology. I'm looking at it, and or of some sort, because it's almost similar to a Greek mythology in that. But in this essence of it, besides of looking at it in that, I'm just a reader of certain things, but they ain't got nothing to do with anything. What I'm saying here is that this particular thing was a concern, because he witnessed in his own eyes a change of event that took place that he was not even considering to take place. This man was in a position that he had to make a choice. And that's what I want you to see, because there's a lot of things going on, and the choice is going to have to be walking in you if you're willing to take whatever it is that's going to come along the ride with this. And now I'm going to show you something. I threw something in there earlier about mythology. I hope that you got that, and go back and look at some of the things about mythology, and look at a particular person. But I'm not going to get into that either today, because I don't want to open up that can too early. But anyway, so here it is, that this particular man, Paul, is what we saw him as. At first, his name was Saul. We going now to chapter 9. And we're going to get into prayer, and then we're going to get started. Most holy and gracious Father, I thank you for this opportunity for us to be here in your presence. I know it's not a simple ride to be here and going through so many things and not sure which way to turn at times. But y'all, I know that there is nothing too hard for you and too difficult for us to understand that you are still on that throne, and you are watching and looking after us. You see the pains that we are going through. You see the turmoils that we are suffering from. Yah, you know that this air that we're breathing have chemicals of many sort. But Yah, I ask you to continue to strengthen our body from every type of illnesses and diseases that wants to encounter the air. Yah, I ask you to strengthen us, give us wisdom on what to put on, what to look at, what to seek, so that we will not keep getting some type of chemical deficiency in our body from this air. We already go through many things already, but let us not go through things that is being done through the air. Hallelujah. So let us look at this particular thing. Now, here it is. We in chapter 8 of Acts. And they talk about in verse 3, it says, as for Saul, he made havoc of the church, or the assembly of the people, entering into every house. That lets you know that the church building wasn't the place and where you see now in this modern age, but they were in houses and they was assembling together, which means ecclesia, which we look at as being the church, which is considered to be the full body of together in an assembly. So you know the difference. So it says that here it is, and two, a devout man carried Stephen to his burial, and three, Saul was in a position of making havoc of the people that was trusting in the power of Yah. And therefore they were scattered abroad. They was all over, but they never stopped preaching the word. They never stopped preaching the word. They never stopped preaching the word. Even though they were suffering, they never stopped preaching the word. That's very important to remember. And then it says that as things went, and I'm trying to go to the exact, because this is chapter 8. I'm gonna go to chapter 9. Okay, because like I said, this is a very long read, and I don't want to lose my breath, through this. So here it is in chapter 9. It says, and yet breathing out threats. He was threatening and slaughtering against the disciples of the Messiah, went unto the high priest and desired of him letters to Damascus, to the synagogue, that it be found out on the way, whether there were men or women, he might bring them bound unto Jerusalem. Now, this was going to Jerusalem. He was still going to capture some people that was doing what he said was reckless and following this person that they call the Messiah. Now, these are what Saul was looking at, that they call this man the anointed one. That's what Christ means, the anointed one. And that's what they were calling him. And they were out there. He was to hurt them, to bring them into prisons, to go rack the houses for where they come from. Now, I want you to think about that. I'm telling you this because it may be a time when you're going to be suffering, and it may be for your faith. So just keep that in mind. And so he journeyed, and as he journeyed, it's verse 3, as he journeyed, he came near Damascus, and suddenly there shined round about him a light from heaven. And he fell to the earth and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? Why? And he said, Who art thou? Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am this Jesus which thou persecuted. It is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. Now I'm reading the King James Version. I do call him the Messiah, but I'm going according to the King James Version. And I want you to understand this particular thing here. When Paul made this statement, he said, Who art thou, Lord? Now I want you to understand something. That is not an unusual word that is spoken to someone that's in charge. It wasn't just Jesus of Nazareth, and it wasn't just anybody who was called of Lord. There was a lot of people that was in charge that they called Lord. That was a typical name that the Romans would use. So it was typical for people that was in Rome to call their chief Lord. It was typical. So it wasn't unusual here that Paul would have made, or Saul would have made this statement, not knowing where the voice was coming from because he could not see. So he don't know if somebody came out of nowhere and did this thing to him. So I don't want to go into a methodology appearance here. I'm trying to you to see that in this particular thing, how this thing would have gone on to a point where this person would have recognized this particular voice as Lord, because they call anybody that was in charge Lord. So read that up in your leisure. It wasn't only until the Messiah made a statement on whom he was in fact that Paul was able to distinguish between which Lord that he was speaking about at the time. because there was no other way for him to know. And it says he trembled and astonished, saying, Lord, why, what will thou have to do me to do? Now he had already been convinced, because here is an entity or a power that was higher than the one that he have been recognized to recognize. Now I want you to understand that. Sorry about that. Now he had to recognize who was in charge. He didn't have this kind of power. Now, I want you to understand, he did not have this kind of power, no matter how much he got the letters from the king. He did not have this kind of power to be tranced off of the horse, to be tranced into a blindness, to be tranced into listening to a voice and not knowing where it came from, to be tranced now that this was the one that's in charge. So a lot of times when you are in a situation and you don't know, this is the Romans' way of who was in control. The one that had the power was the one in control. Okay. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Not going to be before you long because I don't want to mess up my voice. So here he is in this situation. It says in verse 7, and the man which journeyed with him stood speechless, hearing a voice but seeing no man. And Saul arose from the earth, and when his eyes was open, he saw no man. He was at blind point. And they led him by the hand and brought him into Damascus. And he was there for 3 days without sight, and neither did he eat nor drink. And there was a certain disciple at Damascus named Ananias. And in him, now I want you to think about this. It said he saw a vision. Ananias. Now, Ananias was no prophet according to this word. Some people say he was a prophet. It said he was a disciple. He was a believer. A believer. And it says that when he heard this word, behold, he said, the vision said, I am here, Lord. Now, here once again. And he said to him in a vision, Ananias said, behold, I am here, Lord. And the Lord said unto him, arise and go into the street which is called Straight, and inquire in the house of Judas for one called Saul of Tarsus. For behold, he prayed, and he have seen a vision, a man named Ananias coming in and, and putting his hand on him that he might receive sight. He was going to recognize who was in charge, whether he wanted to or not. And he said, but this man, he says in verse 13, this man breathed evil. This man was doing all kinds of things. This man was negative. This man was a bad man. This man was a bad man. This is what he's telling the Messiah at this point. He said, this man was a bad man. How many people you feel inside today that you consider to be bad? How many today that you already written off as being able to do anything because you already consider them not worthy of doing anything? Listen, this is where you stand between being in charge as if you the Lord, or you accepting the price of doing what you're told to do, because you can't tell someone who to choose to do the work that the one who's in charge need done. And it's to let you know that even though Ananias plead, he said, look, this man, he's a mean man. He's a bad man. He's an evil man. He's not a good man. And then he said here, he broke it down. Now, this is very important. 14, he says, and here he have authority from the chief priest to bind all that call on thy name. And this is what the Lord said. He said, go thy way, for he is a chosen vessel unto me to bear my name before the Gentiles and kings and the children of Israel. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. For I will show him how great things he must suffer for my name's sake. Folks, sometimes you think that you make a choice and you saying, well, I'm set free, saved, delivered, walking and dancing and shouting. Did you read that part in it? Did you understand no matter how good of a job that he was taking on, it came with suffering? Didn't matter what nobody else said. Didn't matter what you thought. Didn't matter how you examined it, flipped it, and turned it. In the end result, this man was going to suffer for doing the work God called him to do. So will I. So will you. So if that's not the point of wait for you today, and you got another alternative while you decided to walk into things or in a place called straight, then you are for a rude awakening today. If you ain't ready to suffer, whatever the suffer is, then trust me, your walk with this position is probably not going to be long, because I don't care who you are. I don't care if you did good, bad, or indifferent. If you were chosen and it was Yah that chose you, prepare yourself to suffer. Prepare yourself to suffer. Don't be dismayed in your mind. I told you and showed you two men who suffered dearly for the kingdom. One did nothing that was showing itself to be wrong, yet he is in a position to suffer and got stoned. The other did, excuse me. The other did tremendous things that was evil in the sight of Yah, yet and still he was chosen, and both of them still suffered. No matter how good the one was, and no matter how bad the other one was, they both suffered. So if you think because you don't do nothing wrong in your own eye that you're not going to suffer, then you are getting ready to see the truth as what it really is. And today will be that wake-up call that you thought that you wasn't going to get. Hallelujah. For the reading of Yah's word, I pray very much that you take heed to this message and stop thinking that everything going to be cute for you.